Hey Facebook land, it's Jenn Plotnikoff here. I was supposed to start this at 10 Pacific time, but hopefully you all got the message. I needed a wee bit more prep time for you all. Just as I get started, I'm just gonna share this out to my group. Hey Deanne. How do I share this out to my group? I don't know, it just disappeared. Anyway, I will share this out later. If you are in my group, I think Deanne, you're in my group, yes. You totally are. If anyone is watching and knows how to share this to the group, if you can share this out to the group, anyone else you want to share it to. Just as we're getting started, what I wanted to talk to you, so this is the first day of a 3-part series, and my internet's a little funky, so I'm on my phone. So if it's a little wavy, that's why, but hopefully I've got some good internet for you. Hey Rachel, again, if you guys can share this out with the group, I'm on my phone today. Our internet's a little bit funky, so I thought I would just start out on my phone rather than having to like get cut off and back and forth and all that business. But today is day 1 of 3 parts, 3-part training I wanted to do for you guys. And I wanted to talk about boundaries. Boundaries are a thing. Hey, lovely lady, to you too. Boundaries are a huge thing, and I've done many trainings on this stuff before, but I thought I'd kind of revisit because, you know, one of the things I really notice is our ideas about what boundaries are and what are boundaries, how we actually practice having boundaries are totally different things. And I wanted to talk about realistically what it looks like in real life to have boundaries and what that actually looks and feels like. I mean, we can talk about, you know, some of the things that I talked about that I want to talk about in the next few days, over the next few days with you, is some of the kind of misconceptions that we have. So, you know, I talked about, you know, being able to say no, but we also need to know how to say yes. We need to be clear about who we are and how to embody that. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. There are some tools that I want to give you, but also there are some really important concepts that I think really need to be aired out and thrown to light or shone on. And today, I want to talk to you about one of the most vital. I mean, I talk a lot about fear for a reason, because fear and anger are 2 really important emotions that are directly linked to how we express our boundaries, how we relate to our boundaries, how healthy are our boundaries, and if our boundaries are actually even real or they're just self-protection mechanisms. So one of the things that I went into in depth, I did a boundaries one-on-one training, and I talked a little bit about kind of clarifying the difference between what really boundaries are. And I'm going to give you really simple Cole's notes because it's really important that we understand, we have a baseline of what we're talking about. And before I get deep down into this stuff too, if anyone knows how to share with the group, if you haven't already done so, please do so. Invite people in, and as you guys are coming in, do say hello and let me know how the quality of the transmission is going. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out just how to share this. Oh, okay, I'm going to invite some peeps. So just bear with me a few moments as I just say hey. And meanwhile, I just invite you guys to share a little bit about, you know, when it comes to boundaries, what are some of the hiccups that you run into? I know some of the hiccups that I run into, some of the hiccups that my clients run into. So what are some of the difficulties and challenges that you have with really embodying your boundaries? It's very easy, like I'm going to talk about this, it's really easy to set limits. It's really hard to actually embody them and be in them, right? Like it's actually, it's easier said than done is another way to say it, right? All right, let's, just gonna finish all of that. Okay, so we are done. Okay, thanks guys for your fabulous patience as I just invite some people in. And again, if you want to invite some people in, it's kind of funny because when I do this on my phone, it's super different than on my computer. So I feel a little bit engaged and disengaged at the same time. So if I'm like making funny expressions on my face, that's why. The other question for you guys, you're coming in clear, awesome. So you guys can hear me good, or well, or however that proper English is. I'm actually going to just move my location here a little bit. I do have my little book. Okay, so let's talk about boundaries. Come into my living room. Come on in. For anyone who's ever done one-on-one work with me in person, you know my living room and my wonderful mandala behind me. So what are boundaries? What actually are boundaries? I want to distinguish, again, going back to the boundaries one-on-one training that I did, and do a little Coles Notes for you just to refresh and remind you. If you haven't seen that training, it's also fabulous. So I think I did it in January. If you want to see any of the past trainings I do, Moved From Within is my business page. If you go there, if you just go to past events, all of the replays are available inside the event description. So that's an easy way to find stuff, because otherwise sometimes things get a little hidden. So that's how I organize things for you all. What are boundaries? So quite simply, super simply, boundaries are all about knowing really who you are and having the clarity, confidence. And when I talk about confidence, I really mean a sense of inner safety to actually embody who you really are. It's asking for what you need. Hey, Monica. It's actually showing up as you and being okay with that. And this is an interesting thing because I'm going to tell you a little bit about how most of us perceive boundaries, or how most of us understand boundaries. Most of us understand boundaries, if you think about the word, it's kind of like a wall or a fence or a house, It's meant to keep stuff out. But boundaries aren't actually like that. It's not necessarily about keeping stuff out. And this is where we get hiccuped. Because when we're keeping stuff out, we're also not allowing in the stuff that we want to come in. Okay, boundaries are not a castle fortress, right? It's not about keeping out the enemy at all. So I really want you to understand this concept, because it's really essential in how we really interface, and the shift of perspective now shifts what people are, when we think about when we get angry, upset, or when we feel like people are doing stuff to us, right? This is often when we get boundary stuff gets triggered. It turns it around on, what am I trying to protect? So I'm going to kind of unfold that again a little bit, because this is a really important piece. When we're looking at our boundaries, we're not trying to keep people out or things out or events out. It's not about, hey Natasha, it's not about making, you mean boundaries aren't supposed to look like an army of guards, Rachel says. Yeah, no. That's one of the problems that often we have, because when we have a sentry, it's a lot of energy to maintain the sentry, because it's not a sustainable way of living. And that's often why our boundaries can feel very, very like wishy-washy. And this is the thing, is when we don't have a clear, strong, solid sense of self, when we don't really feel safe in our own being, what happens is we need the army, because the inner space doesn't feel safe. And so we call for backup, we call for reinforcement. And so this shows up in lots of different things. This shows up as the ego. or the egos, our self-identities. It shows up as our job. It shows up as so many different things in the world. It often shows up as the things that we feel we need to cling on to. And they're often felt as a threat if there's change there. So for example, a lot of people are really fearful around losing their jobs because there's this sense of security tied to that. We don't have a clear sense of inner security, and so we create a sense of outer security. And when, for example, the company is downsizing, we feel actually physically threatened, that our sense of security and well-being is at threat, because it is, right? Because we've created that job and that external, external identity as our career or whatever. We've put our self-identity as that becomes kind of like the sentry, if that makes sense. Here's the interesting thing. When we have a strong sense of self within, we don't really need the outer sentry. And the wonderful and interesting thing is we're able to more fluidly accept and adapt change. And so one of the reasons why, and I can't even remember because I can't see it, the topic of today or the description for today, what I wanted to talk about was, I want to talk about anger. And I want to talk about fear. And I want to talk about their relationship and our healthy relationship with those things and how they relate to our anger, or our boundaries. So I talked about boundaries keeping us safe. And so we really do need to have a sense of safety. It's essential. It's a given. And there's different kinds of safety. So there's our physical safety, and then there's social safety, right? There's safety in terms of our important relationships, right? This is why we get jealous or envious, because there's a sense of a threat that happens in terms of, it's not even just back in the olden days or in ancient tribal times, but even now, we often rely on our partners, our family, and our friends as a social network of safety for us to be okay with ourselves in. So there's like this sense of community. There's a sense of, if you get sick, they're there to take care of you. They're there to support you. And so our sense of support around us that we build around us is very much tied to our sense of safety. And so we need the outer safety as well as the inner safety. But what happens is if we don't have the inner safety first, we're going to cling onto the outer safety as if it was like our last kidney that's about to be taken from us. And this becomes unhealthy. This is where we get stuck. This is where we can't have proper boundaries. We can't say yes to the things we need to say yes to, because we're too afraid. And we're too afraid to say no to the things we really don't align to us, because again, we're afraid. So how do we, get over it, so to speak? How do we, what is the solution? Well, I want to break down a little bit more how anger and fear actually help us with our boundaries and how they're tied to our boundaries. Oh, there we go. So now I can't see. Oh, there we go. If you make comments, I may or may not see them. Hopefully I will see them. I just put this into quiet mode. Again, phone technology, fun times. So boundaries are all about safety and security. Okay, great. So that it kind of explains to us why, when we're not honoring our boundaries, when we're not living and embodying our boundaries, why we kind of get a little bit freaked out. What I also want you to invite you to notice is there's often a feeling like, if you think back to the last time you agreed to something that you didn't really want to do deep down inside, but you agreed to it for some reason of pattern. Maybe it was to please somebody. Maybe it was to keep the peace because you didn't want conflict. These are really common things for women, particularly, keeping the peace, keeping everyone happy, making sure everything's flowing, like it's our responsibility alone to take care of the whole world, right? Right? So anyway, think back to the last time you had this sense where you said yes to something that maybe you didn't totally agree with. And then thinking back to the repercussions of how you felt when you did something that you didn't fully agree with. So often what happens is we feel resentment and we're pissed off. And the reason why I want to talk about being pissed off is, well, one, I had this interesting anger experience this morning that I wanted to kind of share through my own process. But you know what I realize is, so most of us are so uncomfortable in our fear and in our anger that we don't even recognize that it's what's going on. So for example, we might feel really resentful, and then we start cycling through these different thoughts around how this person, really isn't, maybe you were supposed to make cupcakes for like the school lunch or something, and you really didn't want to, but you kind of got guilt tripped into it. And the next thing you're resentful of all of the people that you're dealing with. You're like, God, these people are, so demanding and blah, 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 blah. Your head just spins in cycles and cycles and cycles. I don't know about yours, but mine goes off. Sometimes if I really listen, it will go off in crazy, crazy, crazy tangents and wanting to, do terrible things to people. Here's the thing, is most of us don't want to feel that, and we don't want to be with that. And so we just kind of push it aside. We stuff it down, or we ignore it, or we try to meditate it away. And this is the other aspect I wanted to talk about. If you're someone who's like, I don't feel good, I'm going to do my meditation practice. I really want to call you out, because again, I've done some training on this as well. It's not healthy. Meditation is not the answer to being pissed off. It's just not. There are practices that we can embody to help us process through anger so that it flows and that we're able to restore our boundaries. But stuffing it down and meditating away is not going to work. Neither is exploding. But most of us are conscious enough that we are aware that we don't want to explode. But what do? We often implode. So that stuff gets internalized. And something that I see, and just something to kind of like keep your mind open to, it's not necessarily, true for everyone, but something that is a really common theme is when we have chronic back problems, especially low back problems and hip problems and pelvic floor stuff, that's often us holding our anger. I've worked with a lot of people with TMJ stuff and jaw stuff. Guess what? Have you ever seen someone angry and they're clenching their fists and they're clenching their jaw? It's natural. It's normal for us to have these different physiological reactions. This is a normal expression, physiologically, embodiment in your body of anger. Here's the thing, is if we don't consciously understand why we're angry, what we need to do about it in the moment, and how we can process that stuff and let it flow, it just gets stuck and blocked. And our boundaries, unfortunately, also suffer. So free-flowing anger is actually meant to help us build and understand our boundaries. But we can only really be truly in free-flowing anger if we're totally okay with anger within ourselves, right? We can't be in denial about it. So there's a few different ways. I mentioned, sometimes it's important to understand why you're angry. It's not necessarily important to understand all the little pieces, because, we can sometimes use our body as a tool to process different emotions without really having to overanalyze. Sometimes our brain can actually get in our way a little bit. So by embodying our boundaries, I'm actually even talking about embodying some of the difficult emotions like anger. So one of the challenges each training that I do, I want to give you a little bit of home play. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a little exercise, and what I just want you to start to recognize is what anger feels like for you. So you can go into, this is on your own time. Take like 10, 15 minutes with a journal. It could be something that comes up right now, but what I invite you to do is actually, when this video is finished, just to go and either now or whenever it comes up, take some time to actually sit with the memory of the last time you felt pissed off or resentful, or like you totally dishonored your own boundaries, you felt like your boundaries were trampled on. Go back to that memory of that space. Sit there for a few minutes with that memory and start to notice the reaction of your body. What does your body do? Where do you feel the physical sensations? Do you clench your fists? Do you want to yell? So a couple different things to notice are, we can get blockages in the throat. We can get blockages in the stomach. We can get blockages in the first and second chakra. So this is basically a sign that we are guarding and trying to protect because we don't have a really clear and healthy relationship with self, including our anger and fear aspects. So if you think about it, when we have, if healthy boundaries within are meant to protect us, if you can imagine now, your anger is actually a tool that helps you set your boundaries. So on top of that, if we are repressing our boundaries, or repressing our anger, which helps us to define and protect our boundaries, which are compromised, let's now imagine what fear's role in the situation is. So, one analogy is it's kind of like, driving a vehicle that is not in good condition, right? The brakes don't work super well, right? And so what happens is we have to become hyper vigilant when we're driving in order to really get, all of a sudden a drive down a country road becomes this huge ordeal. We don't have proper brakes. We don't have proper steering. We don't have the emotional tools we need to really embody our boundaries in a healthy way. And so what often happens is there's a sense of hypervigilance that needs to happen. It's required to happen because there isn't an internal sense of safety. So what I just want to invite you guys to do, start to understand for you what it means to feel emotion in your body. And we're going to start with a memory. And you're just going to spend 5-10 minutes just writing down what you feel and where you feel it. So that's your home play for today. We're gonna revisit that tomorrow. So definitely do it sometime today. You don't have to do it right away, but just take 10-15 minutes. It doesn't have to be a long time. To just take a few minutes, get quiet, get uninterrupted, sit with yourself, and really ask yourself, what was the last time you felt anger? What was the last time you were angry or resentful or frustrated? One of the things I see a lot as a pattern is that we don't allow ourselves to feel things that are difficult to the point where, and to the extreme end, and I'm going to talk about, because in the spiritual world, we don't just deny this stuff, but we villainize it. Okay, we talk about anger as a bad and negative vibe, and we don't allow ourselves to even touch it. Something else that rang kind of true for me yesterday, I did a video with you guys sharing about fear and some of my own fears that I had with doing that particular video. It took me about 3 weeks to do it. One of the things that came up in conversation around that topic was this idea of, really feeling alone. And, I think that this one of the reasons why I do the work that I do and I support in the way that I do. Some of you, for example, are in my Sacred Fear Healing Circle, and we have actually a new member of the circle. So there are now 5 spaces left officially if you want to join. I'll give some details for registering soon. Hey, Raina. One of the things that came up was a sense of feeling isolated. And what's interesting is, most of us are very good at being aware and having conscientiousness around emotions, around our health, around our being. But one of the interesting things is we kind of put ourselves in a catch-22 where we have these almost too high expectations of ourselves. We feel like because we're spiritual beings or healers, that we need to be somehow better than human, that we are somehow too good to experience pain and, negative emotions and these difficult feelings. And I think often what happens is we can really struggle with being with this stuff because we feel in a way that we shouldn't have to, that we really don't have to suffer, that we shouldn't have to suffer in this way. And that can really entrap us because if you think about, for example, I think about my experience being in the yoga community for almost 20 years and kind of being so ingrained in a culture that is so in denial about negative emotions. There is a sense of constantly letting things go. And what I want to talk about is you can't actually let something go until you have something that's solid there. So for example, if you don't have a solid sense of connection with yourself, a really clear and aligned sense of self-confidence, you can't let go of the ego. You cannot, because it serves a purpose. It's like if you've ever seen a house with a really bad foundation and they put up these supports around the house, these posts, so that they can actually dig out some of the foundation and actually rebuild the foundation beneath, right? So what we are all attempting to do in our healing process is essentially kicking out the posts, the support posts, before the foundation is set and before there's even really a foundation to begin with. Of course, the house falls down. Of course, we're not going to be able to kick out the posts. The posts are there supporting everything. Everything. So I really want you to think about this for a moment. I really want this to sink into a deeper cellular level. Our boundaries are those support posts. And it's kind of interesting, Rachel, you mentioned that our boundaries aren't supposed to like an army of guards. Here's the thing. You need the army of guards. We all need our army of guards so that we can have the time to start to do the inner healing work and build a strength and a foundation from the inner world out. Here's the thing. We didn't call in that army of guards for no reason. They are serving a really important purpose. And without them, we don't do the day-to-day things that we do. Without them, there is not the consciousness for personal growth. And so this is really important to understand. Do not dishonor the army of guards. If and when we do our healing work, those army of guards realize that they actually aren't needed and they go to somebody else's house. They go help somebody else out until they are supported from the inside out. So this is really what I wanted to talk about today, was I wanted to talk about how we can support ourselves and why it's really important to actually look at the stuff that we don't want to look at, because it is really the foundation. Anger is the foundation. Healthy anger and really having a healthy relationship with anger and healthy relationship with fear are the foundations to actually starting to have healthy boundaries. It is no coincidence that when someone trespasses on your boundaries, you feel pissed off. It's not a coincidence. It's because anger is here for a reason. It wants to protect you. So what I'm asking you to do is don't push it away. We need to start to learn to listen. Again, this stuff can be really challenging. And the other conversation I had yesterday was, how support is really, really essential. And it's not just that we need, I talked about social support, our families, our friends, our social structures. We also need different kinds of support. And so one of the reasons I created the Sacred Circle is that I wanted to create a circle of support that wasn't just me, but also something a bit greater than me, so that we have a community. So I chose 8 women to gather around so that we can actually learn, heal, and support each other in our growth, but also the development and the blossoming of our inner stability, our inner sanctuary. From this inner sanctuary, it's a safe landing place for the stuff that's really challenging to be with. For example, I see this all the time with my clients. It's like they don't really want to deal with, maybe it's a difficult emotion or memory. But when I remind them that it's okay, in holding that particular space, there is this essence of safety and acceptance that's created. And this is the magic of healing this stuff. We don't have to push against it. We don't have to bang our heads against the wall. We literally can have a soft landing pad. And it's just like, if you rock climb and you fall a few times and the rope catches you and you realize you have a soft place to land and you're going to be okay. And you start to get that internal sense of security within yourself. You can move beyond the fears that are telling you you're going to fall, and you can do spectacular things in a vertical environment. And so what I'm asking of my clients is really this. It's really take the courage to say yes to yourself and to say yes to a different type of support system and trust in that. That support system is what sparks our inner healing capacity. You all know that you have the capacity to heal. You all know that you have the capacity to transmute your anger. You have the capacity to not freak out at the people you don't want to freak out at. That's the thing. When we repress our anger, it's got to go somewhere. And so it goes internally often, for most of us, let's face it. And every once in a while, it explodes. And I will just share with you, actually, even today, earlier this morning, and it's something I think particularly for women, really watching your hormonal cycle. So, I'm PMSing right now. And whenever, like the week before my period, I will have anger show up big time. My patience gets very little and I can get a bit explosive. And so what I've learned to do is I really need to, this is really when, for me, the lessons of my boundaries come up. And I had better listen. Because if I don't, what happens is this. I break stuff. I actually broke a glass. I was just putting away the dishes and I had so much anger channeling through my body. I thought I could do a couple chores or tasks before doing my practices to channel my anger and really work through it. And that's what happened. It's so intense. This is why we have kind of a fear around dealing with our anger, because it's a very powerful emotion. But what I want to kind of relate is this. If you look at the sacred goddess of fire, Pele represents passion. She represents fire. And she represents creation through destruction. This is the energy of anger. It's about the creation of our boundaries through the destruction of what needs to be destroyed in order to be protected. It is both a sentry and kind of an inner fire and maintenance system. Hey, Shamika. Glad you could join me. I was thinking about you because I did a video. You inspired yesterday. So what I'm talking about is the importance of this power in our powerful emotions and really being able to have a place of support. And so the Sacred Fear Healing Circle really is this space that I built, because it really requires a certain type of support to hold space for this kind of stuff. It's not easy to talk to even our loved ones and our friends and family and even people we trust about things about our anger coming up, because here's the thing. Our anger triggers the anger in others. Our lack of boundaries triggers the lack of boundaries in other people. So often what happens is you get a mirror thing going on. This is often why, if you have big fights with your partner and that stuff, it's because we're mirroring this stuff back and forth. And so when you have that type of relationship, while it can be supportive in so many other ways, when we're really looking at healing and repairing the inner world, we need a different kind of support. And so one of the things I realized as well is, and this is why I want 8 women, 8 is the infinity symbol. So there's this wonderful sense of a continuum of energy and support, as well as relating and connecting. One of the things I realized that the magic that happens in group work is that we can connect with others and we can create our own support system. Because you can't have too much support. Like, it's not possible. This is something that it's often funny because my clients often argue with me about that they have support. I tell this story a lot. I had one woman who literally was like, I was so pissed off for so long. She was like 5 or 6 weeks into my one-on-one program, and she was like, I wanted to hit you every time you talked about support. I was like, I'm supported. I have support. Until she came on like week 5 or 6, and she was like, oh, I get it now. I get it now. Because support is a web. It's a network. And we need different kinds of support for different things. I was saying hey to Shamika, who is my business coach. I seek support with a sisterhood of amazing businesswomen because for me, it is one of my own personal growth channels. And I cannot do this on my own because when I come up through hiccups and challenges, these women help hold me. And it is a very, very powerful, powerful, powerful thing. When we are doing things where we are digging deep and really building a foundation within, so that we don't need the century. It really frees up our energy. This is what true health looks like. The inner support, being okay with ourselves, being okay with our anger, knowing what to do with it, knowing how our anger actually helps connect us with our boundaries, knowing how fear helps connect us with our intuition and when to listen and when to take action and what type of action to take. These are magical aspects that we all have within us. We all have these capacities. This really is our inner wisdom, our inner magic, and it's our secret to healing. Like, it is not, I don't heal my clients. They really heal themselves. But what I do is I create the container to make it possible. Their own potential, their own power is what actually is doing the work. This is why, hey Amber, this is why, when I talk about when we really have an inner strength, it's like, I often use this example of crutches. If you've broken a bone, say you've broken your leg and you're on crutches, crutches is kind of like what I refer to as the ego self. It's necessary because until the bone is integrated, until the cells are knit and strong and have a sense of structure and stability, we need the external support system. But this is the thing. We're trying to get rid of the crutches before the bones are healed. That's the silliest thing. If we think about it that way, it's like, it's crazy. But this is the thing about letting go. It's not about letting go until we're ready. It's about doing the healing work so that it's easy to know when you're ready. It's easy to know when the bone's healed, when you have a broken leg. You can feel it. You can feel the strength building back. You can feel the bones. We can see it in the x-rays. You know in your body that you have a sense of strength. And so you willingly give back to your hospital, your doctor, whoever you got your crutches from, or you give them to your friend that broke their leg. You willingly give up your crutches because you don't need them anymore. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to give up our support system without actually having a proper support system, without having the right kind of support system. And so it's interesting too, because something that I reminded of the conversation yesterday, we talked about not just about support, but we talked about, again, feeling alone, but being surrounded by support, or feeling like almost guilty or bad about sharing our story or experience. And actually, this is a conversation I think you and I had, Lana. Lana, if you're watching this, hello. I know you watch you watch me. But we had a conversation, this lovely human, Lana and I, that I know from Mexico, about anxiety and how, the more and more we get surrounded sometimes with a sickness or an illness, especially chronic illness, that the less and less we want to do with it. The more and more we're just like, the more I focus on anxiety, it's like, it's making it worse. Like, I want nothing to do with this stuff anymore. And sometimes we do need to have a pause. But one of the conversations we had yesterday was in changing our story. And our story is part of our support system. So what I want you to kind of look at is, in my analogy of the broken bones and the crutches, our support system can be our story and our self-identity. And so in order to start to shift that, we have to really nurture what's going to strengthen the inner structure. So what we often do is we cycle into focusing on the fact that we need to use crutches, and we feel bad about it. We feel like we should be above this stuff. Like, I'm superhuman. Why would I need crutches? Right? It's okay. It's okay to have a story. It's okay to understand your story. It's okay to tell your story. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be your story forever. But what is really necessary, again, is we do need to start to change our story around how we relate to our story. Does that make sense? Again, give me some comments or hellos if this is hitting home for you, if the transmission is clear, both Wi-Fi wise and energetic wise. So I'm just going to repeat a couple things from earlier on in the video. So I gave the home play a little bit earlier. Just as a quick recap, boundaries are very simple. Healthy boundaries are a representation of your internal sense of security and safety and inner being. It's really that simple. It's just being clear on who you are and being okay with that on the deepest possible level. That's where our boundaries come from. So here's the thing, because most of us are still working on that, and we're in different places of that, we create structures around us, whether it's an army, whether it's crutches, whether it's a story, whatever that is, to help protect us in the meanwhile. And so this is like what I call false boundaries. So if you've watched the Boundaries 1-on-1, I call it, false boundaries versus real boundaries. So that stuff is needed, but it's not real support. It's temporary support. In order to really transmute that stuff and let it go, we do have to really nurture the inner support system. This is very important. There's many different ways of doing that, but what I wanted to talk about today was anger and fear, and specifically anger, because anger is a wonderful tool for us to start to understand where our boundaries are and how we relate to them. So anger essentially is our sentry. It is our protector, and it shows us when we're not in alignment with ourselves and our boundaries. It shows us where our boundaries are and where there are holes. So the home play today is you can take 10, 15 minutes. Heck, if you want to take half a day, you can take as long as you want. But the reason why I say 10, 15 minutes is because I want this to be doable, and I want you to do it today. So do this today, sit with it. You can always come back to this exercise another time. So again, if you only have 5, 10 minutes, just do it today for 5, 10 minutes. Come back at another time and see what happens. But just take a bit of quiet time for yourself and just reflect for a moment. Bring yourself into a memory of the last time where you really felt your boundaries were trampled. You felt resentful. You felt maybe angry, and start to notice in that memory, as you're bringing that back, what's going on in your body. So what are you noticing? Is your jaw clenched? Is your fist tight? So a couple little, again, cues to think about is if you suffer from chronic back pain, hip pain, pelvic floor stuff, jaw stuff, tinnitus, and TMJ, if you're a grinder of your teeth at night, I just want you to be aware. It's not necessarily meaning that you're repressing your anger, but these are really common places in our body that we tend to hold anger and emotion. That's really challenging. So when you're doing this exercise, just check into those places and see what happens in your body, and just write down what you're experiencing. Try not to judge. Again, it's not helpful for us to judge what's going on. Just take it as information. Take it as information and wisdom that's coming from a higher place within your physical structure. This is the wisdom of your cells. This is the wisdom of your DNA. And this is the wisdom of your sacred animal body. Embodying the human body is actually a pretty incredible experience. Our body is one of the most amazing tools that we have, which is why I do a lot of work with my clients with embodiment work, because when we start to do these different practices, we actually learn to listen to our body. We actually learn what that looks like in real life. You know, it's one thing to say, listen to your body and blah, 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 blah. Most of us struggling, myself included, we struggle with actually practicing what that actually looks like. So that's the first thing that I just wanted to do a little recap on is, so the home play is the anger memory and tapping into what's happening with your body without judgment and with some kindness and compassion. So hold a little bit of space for yourself and just write down in your journal or a notebook what you notice, what comes up. If you're very visual, you can also do visual representation. So there isn't like a lot of restrictions here. Like, this is an exploration. If you're a mover and you want to do some movement, move through your body. What places want to move? Do you feel like you want to go for a run? Do you feel like you want to hit things with sticks? You can throw rocks. So actually, and I encourage you, if this stuff comes up, these are wonderful ways to start to allow repressed and stuck anger to start to flow. Just make sure that you take care of yourself. And if you do feel overwhelmed, feel free to check in with me, or just stop the exercise and kind of ground yourself. If you have any questions, again, just send me a message. Send a comment. Again, I will be sharing this with my tribe with the Moved by Spirit group. And if you're wanting a little bit more of a private and curated space for Q&A, I just encourage you to find me there and write a comment or question. And I will get back to this. If you're watching it on the replay, I do go back to the questions as well. So the two things that I wanted to leave you with are this. One is your home play. So this is your experiment. And the second thing is support. And so I did talk about the Sacred Fear Healing Circle. And again, there are 5 spaces available. Or sorry, there's 8 spaces available. There's 5 spaces left. It is a support space and a landing space for, this is exactly what we're going to be working through. So if you are needing some support with that, check it out. I will post the link in the description of the video a little bit later. I'm just on my phone right now, so I'm not sure if I can like do that. Anyway, technology is beyond me in this very moment, but I will post the link for that with all of the information. Basically, actually, you know what? I will let you guys know who this is for really simply because I think have it up here in my little office space. Basically, this is for you if you're ready to start to heal some of this more challenging stuff. So this is a really safe and the sacred circle is a safe landing zone to easily and quickly move through some of this difficult and challenging stuff. And one of the things that I wrote, the circle is not for you if you think fear, anger, and trauma are low vibrations and you want nothing to do with them. And that's not a joke. I wrote that because the sacred space is really about having the courage to transform our ideas and preconceptions around what's bad and negative and low vibration. So again, it is about sacred fear. Sacred fear is connected deeply to our intuition and our ability to protect ourselves in a healthy and conscientious way. And so in order to really, move into our superpower aspects of intuition and healthy boundaries, we really do need to shift our perspective of how we look at healing this stuff. So, this is really for you. If you've been working hard, and you've been doing a lot of your own healing stuff and you've been working very, very hard, you've been working yourself to the ground, you've tried a lot of different things, you've probably tried everything, heck. I tried everything before I got to this space for sure, and I'm constantly expanding on my own levels of support, because with each levels, our support needs to diversify and shift and change. And so if you've been working really, really hard and you feel like there's still something that's missing, what I offer is integrative work for people that have already been doing work. So this is like, if you are like, I'm not sure what energy medicine is and I don't believe in that, that's probably not the space for you. However, if you don't have to understand energy medicine, you don't have to understand the Akashic records, you don't have to understand what embodiment is, you just have to be open to really trying something different, trying something in a different way. And I think the biggest thing for this circle space is you have to believe in hope. Like, you really do have to believe deep down within you that there is hope for your own healing, that you don't need to tolerate pain for the rest of your life, that there is a better way, even if you don't know what that way is. One of the most important things that really distinguishes people that I work with and people that I do not work with is this hope factor. In my own self, I call it stubbornness, but it's also a sense of resilience and a drive to really want to evolve forward. And so the people in the circle, the people in my space, the incredible women that surround me, whether you're in the circle or you're in my greater circle, you know who you are. I'm talking to you right now. You know that there is a deeper capacity within you. And my invitation to you is to keep nurturing that. And so if you need support with nurturing that, there's many levels of support. Even I mentioned some of the past workshops that I've done, which are free. So even if you're not ready to invest in a financial way, there are those videos available. There is the group, which is available to you, which I do readings in and I do Q&A. And by the way, if you're in my group, please utilize it more, because I'm in there doing stuff and I don't see a lot of questions from you guys. So say hello. Like, I'm inviting you really to ask the questions you don't want to ask. I can hold the space for that stuff. That's what I do. That really is what I do. And so I invite you to use those spaces. If you are ready for, the financial commitment, there's a couple different programs I offer. And right now, as I mentioned, I think it's in 10 days. We start in 10 days with the Sacred Fear Healing Circle. So if this is a wonderful landing spot, this is a wonderful starting point for working with me specifically as a support foundation of something to build upon. So the idea is that we're going to be supporting each other. I'm going to offer you one-on-one support with this space. So there is some customized work that you're going to do, specifically personalized for you and your own experience. And then we're also going to have group holding space. So within the collective of the Sacred 8 women, the infinity, our collective energy basically creates a bigger cushion, a bigger circle, a bigger space to hold all of our energies. And with that bigger energy, we have a bigger capacity. And so basically, we can move through stuff that's big and scary with more ease and more quickly. And that's all that means. So really this stuff, again, I say if you've been working hard, awesome, but here's my invitation to you to work less hard. Because with this approach, it really is about knitting the bones and really, really aligning with the cellular structure and really bringing healing to the wisdom of the body from the wisdom of the body. This is no secret or surprise that I named my business Move From Within, because really it's within us. It's just a matter of creating the right type of support and space to allow it to emerge from us. It wants to come. It wants to emerge. It wants to be with us. And so really it's about allowing. And so if that's something that is aligned to you, if you're ready to start to, put down the weapons and start to allow things in, allow in the help, allow in the support, then I invite you into the circle. Again, I'll post the link to it for the details. I'll give you guys a little bit of details now, which whoever has stayed with me till this bitter end. Well, it's not bitter, it's a sweet end, but bittersweet until tomorrow. As I mentioned, this is for you. If you are really ready to, make peace with your shadows in a really gentle and easeful way. If you have the willingness to really receive the infinite well-being that really is deep within you, if that's the space where you're at, this is for you. It's not for you if you think that I'm going to save you. I can't save anyone. I basically create the space to help you save yourself. If you're in crisis mode as well, this is not the place for you. If your world is falling apart, what I really ask you to do is first to seek help and other kind of support immediately. So, emergency support. Really, if you are in crisis mode, what I want is for people to come into the circle. It's okay if you're a little messy, if we're all a little messy, but if we're going through a space where we're really in a meltdown place, what I want is for you to really be grounded in your decision making. I don't want you to just react thinking that this will save you. I really want you to be in a place where you're sure in your body and in your being that this is right for you, right? Because often, sometimes out of fear, we'll do things impulsively. So I don't want that for you. And again, if you think that trauma and anger and all this stuff are just negative vibe stuff, you got nothing to do with it, then this is not the circle for you, because we are going to be deep diving into this stuff in a very soft and gentle way, in a very supported and integrated way. And it's actually a very sweet process. It's a very, there is a sweetness and softness when we actually start to tap into this inner capacity, because it's not the stern, angry, teacher that's like trying to hold us to it. It's actually this allowing space that we've been yearning for, most of us, for most of our lives. So this is that space if you're looking for it. And it's 4 weeks. We start July 21st, the first class. So the materials will all be sent on July 21st, and about a week later we're going to have our first class session all together. I'm already booking. I've already completed a couple one-on-one sessions with some people who are already joined the circle, and booking one-on-one sessions for now up until the start and in through the circle. And the investment, so if you are in and you are like, yes, 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 I'm going to send the link, which is where you can register, and the investment is $497. So super easy, super gentle landing spot. If this is the right space for you, you know it. As I mentioned yesterday, I have been in meditation. I do a daily meditation practice every day, and something that I have been meditating on is I'm already feeling and connecting to the energy of the women in the circle. So the women who haven't come in yet, I feel you and hear you, and I just want to welcome you to say yes, to step in if you know that it's resonant for you. So today is part 1. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, we'll have some more home play. We're going to talk a little bit more about what it is to embody and live our boundaries. So stay tuned tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific time, as well as Saturday Pacific time. And just a quick announcement, normally I do a live on Saturday afternoon. And what I'm doing is I'm going to be moving that live to 10. So I'm going to kind of do this 3-part series in replacement of my Saturday live, because we're actually doing a little bit of traveling this weekend. So that's why the time change. I'm sorry for you all, I had a last minute time change this morning. I needed a little bit more time to prep. Went for a little surf and was a bit longer than expected. So I moved today to 10:30, but tomorrow will be at 10, and the next day for part 3 as well will be at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So join me if you have questions, and the stuff that comes up through the home play, please feel free to post it either here or post it in the group if you want a space that's a little bit more curated and a little bit more private. So I'm going to leave you all with that. Welcome in the play with your sacred anger. Be gentle with yourself, and if stuff comes up, remember that the stuff can be a little bit intense. Take a bit of time after the practice to just eat something nourishing and delicious, and make sure it's satisfying and delicious. Don't just eat salad that you're not craving. Like, go for something that's delicious. Really nurture your sense of sensuality and deliciousness. And drink something. So definitely get hydrated, nurture your body, nurture your emotions. Sometimes a lot of stuff can go through, and of course it's coming through our body in terms of the physiological experience of it. It's coming through as hormones, it's coming through as all sorts of chemical processes through our nervous system. So really allow yourself to be gentle with yourself, physically and emotionally. Especially if you're doing this journey over the next few days with me. This can bring up a lot of stuff. So if you need some support with that, reach out to me. If you have questions about something that's coming up, ask. It's really important. The other thing to mention is we often do feel we are alone, and we aren't. And so when we ask the questions that we're often too afraid to ask, there is that resonance within others of like allowance and receiving and witnessing. So I do invite you really to share, because it really, it allows and invites others to release what they need to share as well. Often we have a similar resonance going on. So let's help each other and support each other, and actually have the courage to ask the questions that can be sometimes really challenging to ask. All right, loved ones. Mwah. Goodbye to you for now, and I'll see you tomorrow at 10 Pacific time, and Saturday at 10 Pacific time, same place. And hopefully I will also be live streaming this in the group if you want to comment there too. But today I had some internet stuff fun, so I'm on the phone, which is why you guys get the wavy, gravy fun. Anyway, love to you all. Mwah! Have fun exploring your angry places with love and support and some lightness of being. Take care. And again, if you are interested in the circle, I will be posting a link just shortly after this video. I can also give you guys a URL as well as just movedfromwithin.com/the sacred fear healing circle. So that is the URL. All right, loves. Lots of love to you. Beautiful Thursday. See you Friday morning. Mwah!